This is Chapter 16, NTFS Users and Groups. You'll remember that NTFS is the NT file system. One of the keys, or the main key to protecting your data, is based on two related processes, authentication and authorization. Authentication basically proves that you are who you are. That is usually a name and password in today's world. Authorization basically determines what you can do once you've proved who you are. For files and folders, authorization is controlled by the NTFS, the NT file system, which assigns permissions to users and groups. Because passwords are currently the main way we authenticate, they are the primary key to protecting your data. Therefore, you should never give out your password. Also, make sure you use strong passwords, which I define is at least 10 characters in length, including letters, numbers, and symbols. A group is basically a collection of accounts that can define the capabilities of its members. An account can also be the member of many different groups. A user account basically has a name and a password associated with it so that it can be used to authenticate, and then permissions can be assigned to authorize access. Professional editions of Windows allow you to add, remove, and modify both users and groups by using the tools in Administrative Tools MMC in the control panel. In Windows, every folder and file on an NTFS partition has a list containing two sets of data. At the top, you see every group or user with access to this file or folder. And secondly, under that, you see the level of access of each of these groups or users. So as you highlight the group or user, in the second window, you will see the permissions that group or user has for this particular item. When you create a new file or folder in NTFS, you will become the owner of that file or folder. This means that you have full permission to do anything to that file or folder, including changing permissions to prevent anyone else from accessing it. You do need to remember, however, that administrator accounts can take ownership of everything that they have administrative rights to. This basically prevents someone from having orphan files if you have a deleted user. The standard NTF permission for folders are full control, modify, read and execute, list folder contents, read and write. And the standard NTFS permissions for files include full control, modify, read and execute, read, and write. Now basically, if you copy or move an object from one NTFS partition to another partition, from C to D, for instance, the permissions that the copy on the new partition will be the permissions that it inherits from the destination. If you copy an object within a partition, it will inherit the permissions of its destination, but the original will keep its permissions. If you move or copy an object to a FAT volume, it will lose all its permissions because the FAT file system does not have permissions. So basically, user accounts, groups, and NTFS work together to enable you to share a Windows PC securely with multiple user accounts, meaning you can determine who has rights to what. Windows Vista enables you to permit specific user accounts to access shared resources and to set their level of access. It also uses the public folder, which any user can access. Windows 7 introduced the ability to share libraries through the home group, which is basically a public folder. In addition to this, administrators have access to some administrative shares that are default. In other words, they're set up ahead of time. No one else can see these. They are shown as an administrator with the $sign after the name. Anyone who's not an administrator cannot see these shares. But it does allow the administrator to have access to certain default shares without having to set them up first. Also, NTFS has file encryption, which basically means scrambling the data. File encryption provides the only true way to secure your data from access by any other user. The professional editions of Windows provide a feature called Encrypting File System, or EFS, which will encrypt any file or folder on the computer. Windows Vista, Windows 7, Windows 8 professional editions also include the ability to encrypt an entire disk. This is not EFS, but it is BitLocker drive encryption. Let's talk about user account control. Back in the day, Windows XP made it almost mandatory that every account on a computer was administrator because limited users couldn't do common tasks. Starting with Windows Vista, Microsoft basically invented the user account control to fix this glaring security problem. At that point, for any common task that required administrator privilege, a dialog box popped up and you simply had to enter administrator credentials to continue if you were not already an administrator, which kept most people still using administrator accounts. However, with Windows 7, they improved Vista's overactive UAC by establishing 4 levels of security that you could set your UAC at. You could set it always notify. You could set it to notify me only when programs try to make changes to my computer. You could set it to notify me only when programs try to make changes to my computer, but do not dim my desktop. And you could set it to never notify. Never notify basically turned off UAC. Do notice Windows 8 has very similar levels of UAC, but the never notify setting doesn't turn it off. You will still get notifications about some things. And always remember to keep calm and document everything.